From the first witness, and this is a hearing that's going to take more than today, most likely. You heard the defense in the beginning of this saying this could be a day, 2 days, or even more. Right now we're getting ready for the second witness to take the stand. You're looking at live pictures of the defendant, Ross Harris, inside the Cobb County courtroom. Again, the big issue today is what evidence comes in, what evidence comes out. The defense wants all of the electronic evidence suppressed at trial. Let's take you back in. We'll be streaming this all day long.
Nothing but the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. So
yes.
All right, once you're comfortable, why don't you adjust that microphone and let's state your full name for the record and spell that for our court report.
It's Sean Murphy. S-H-A-W-N, M-U-R-P-H-Y.
And where are you employed, sir?
Cobb County Police Department.
What specifically do you do with the Cobb County Police Department?
I work for the Crimes Against Persons Unit.
How long have you been with the Crimes Against Persons Unit?
Almost 2 years now.
Prior to that, did you have prior service with Cobb County Police Department?
Yes, prior to that I was employed with Cobb around 7 years.
And so you've been there 7 years total?
Almost 10 years now.
Gotcha. And what specifically do you do with the Crimes Against Persons Unit?
Crimes Against Persons, basically it investigates crimes against persons, assaults, homicides, robberies, sexual assaults, terroristic threats, things of that nature.
You mentioned homicides, so death investigation is part of your function?
Yes, it is.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit about your role in this particular case. And let's direct your attention to June the 18th of 2014. Articulate for the court how it is you became involved in this investigation from the outset.
Well, on that date, I was riding with Detective Stoddard, and we received a phone call advising us that there was a homicide investigation in Precinct 3 at 2955 Acres Mill Road.
That's in Cobb County, correct?
Yes, sir.
And once you received information that there was a homicide investigation that needed to be conducted at that location, what, if anything, did you and Detective Stoddard do?
Me and Detective Stoddard then responded to the scene. We arrived at the location in approximately 17:07 hours on that day.
And describe the scene as you found it when you initially responded with lead investigator Detective Stoddard.
When we first arrived, there was a 2011 Hyundai Tucson parked behind Uncle Matteo's Pizza. It was kind of stopped in the middle of the parking lot. The door was open, and there was what appeared to be a small child on the ground. It was covered by a white blanket at the time with crime scene tape around it, and several pedestrians standing around the crime scene tape, and also several police officers and detectives too.
You and Detective Stoddard later identified the deceased child on scene to be Cooper Harris, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
When you initially arrived on scene, had uniformed patrol already arrived on that scene and done anything?
Yes, they had already arrived on scene, secured the scene, and they had the child's father, Justin Harris, inside of a patrol car. And I was directed to some witnesses by the officers after I had observed the scene.
And speaking to those witnesses, did you learn anything about what the defendant may have said when he initially arrived on the scene, precipitating the 911 call that came out?
Yes, the two witnesses I spoke with, they stated that they saw the vehicle pull in at a high rate of speed, come to a stop. The driver exited the vehicle, opened the rear passenger door, pulled the child out of there, began trying to do CPR on it. They said he was making statements of, "Oh my God, what have I done? My son." Once some other pedestrians came up and tried helping him out, medical, doing CPR, that type of nature, he stepped back from it and began using his cell phone.
You were able to identify the defendant as the person that was driving this vehicle and made those statements, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All of this was prior to you leaving that scene, correct?
Yes, it was.
In addition to speaking with some of the witnesses and getting their statements, what, if anything, did you do on the scene at that time?
Besides speaking with the witnesses, took a quick look at the vehicle and just the surrounding area just to soak it in and see what the scene looked like.
And were you able to get a description of that vehicle that you later used to obtain a search warrant for?
Yes, it had a Georgia tag RT7088. It was a light blue 2011 Hyundai Tucson.
In this particular case, who was assigned as the lead detective into the death investigation of Cooper Harris?
Detective Stoddard was.
And what was your more limited role in the investigation with Detective Stoddard?
I was assigned as his second to assist him with the investigation.
For our record, what are the responsibilities of a second versus a lead investigator oftentimes?
The lead investigator is basically in charge of the investigation. The second, generally, you're there to assist with whatever he needs, because some of these investigations can be pretty complicated. Generally, that'd be getting court orders, search warrants, helping out with interviews and that type of thing.
Did you actually participate in the interview with the defendant that was conducted on June the 18th of 2014?
No, I did not.
Do you recall who did that interview?
Detective Stoddard, and I believe it's Waldorf or Waldorf.
Now, at some point, did Detective Stoddard task you with doing some things in this particular case in terms of search warrants?
Yes.
Why don't you describe for the court what it is that you were asked to do?
I was asked to obtain a search warrant for Mr. Harris's residence by Detective Stoddard.
And were you also asked to obtain a series of search warrants involving the defendant's vehicle and some electronic devices?
Yes, sir.
I want to ask you, initially, we're going to talk about the June 18th and June 19th, 2014 search warrants. You and I had a chance to review those, correct?
Yes, sir.
What initial information did you have that you used to obtain those search warrants? Can you summarize that for the court?
Basically, initially that Mr. Harris had left for work with the child. He took him to Chick-fil-A, they had breakfast, and then he went to his work instead of the daycare, forgetting to drop the child off, went to work for the day. As he was leaving work, driving down the street, he realized the child was still in the vehicle, pulls into Uncle Mattio's on Acres Mill Road, and pulls the child from the vehicle.
You had mentioned the statements that the defendant made on
Yes.
scene. Did you include that as part of your search warrant application in your testimony to the judge?
Yes, I did. He stated, "Oh my God, what have I done?" As he was getting the child out of the vehicle.
Did Detective Stoddard and other detectives share information with you that became a part of your search warrants in this particular case?
Yes, I did.
And specifically, was information shared with you about what the defendant said during his custodial interview about having researched deaths in a hot car?
Yes, during the, while I was obtaining the search warrant, the interview was going on. And I was advised, not by Detective Stoddard or anybody in the interview, but other detectives that were watching the interview, that Mr. Harris had made statements to the extent that he had recently searched through the internet child deaths inside vehicles and what temperature it occurs at, and that this was one of his biggest fears.
And you had mentioned the defendant admitting that this was one of his fears, that his child would die in a hot car. Is that correct?
Yes.
Was that information shared with the magistrate court as you attempted to get search warrants for electronic devices in particular?
Yes.
Now, in addition to the defendant's statement in this particular case, are you aware that his wife was also interviewed?
Yes, she was.
And did she disclose anything to detectives in terms of her having a similar fear involving the death of her child in a car?
Yes, the detectives that had interviewed her, I believe they went to the daycare to speak with her because that's where she was at. They said that she made similar statements that this was one of her biggest fears. They also made comments that she wasn't showing much emotion and that they were going to have her come back to the office so they could interview her at the person's office.
Was this information relayed to you as part of the process of you getting search warrants?
Yes.
I want to talk about the first series of search warrants that you obtained here. On June the 18th of 2014, did you obtain 4 search warrants from the Magistrate Court of Cobb County?
Yes, I did.
And do you recall which judge that was that you applied for those search warrants with?
It was Judge Inman. Or Mays, I'm sorry.
Okay. Judge Mays for the first 4?
Yes, first 4 was Judge Mays.
Now, in addition to, well, let's talk about the process itself. Explain for our record and for the court how it is generally that you apply for a search warrant in Cobb County.
You type up your affidavit, basically your reason for getting the search warrant, what you're looking for, the location, put together a search warrant application, and then you will present that to the judge and speak with them via a video conference.
This video conference, we call it an EWI system, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And that's an electronic warrant interface?
Yes.
Does it work sort of like Skype?
Yes.
And in this particular case, did you indeed type up four search warrants on June the 18th, 2014, based on information that you knew personally and information that was relayed to you from other detectives?
Yes, sir.
And were you successful in obtaining those first 4 search warrants?
Yes, I was.
In addition to the typed written application or affidavit and the search warrant itself, did you give sworn oral testimony to Judge Mays in support of these search warrants?
Yes, I did.
And have you had an opportunity to actually listen to the recordings of your sworn testimony to Judge Mays for the initial search warrants?
Yes, I did.
For the EWI system, does it break up the recordings by search warrant?
Yes.
Is there a way when you have the same case but multiple search warrants with multiple targets, is there a way that you specifically ask the court to incorporate all of the testimony for all of the search warrants because it's the same factual basis?
Yes, the judge or the judge you're doing the search warrants with will typically take into account the previous ones that you have done. That's how it was the first day. The second day, I had a list of search warrants I was getting, and he basically took into account the testimony for the first one with all the remaining ones after that for that day.
Okay. Let's talk about these initial search warrants from the 18th. State's Exhibit Number 1 is a certified copy of Mr. Lumpkin search warrant. I'm going to reference the last 4 numbers, so it's 0596. Looking at 0596, do you recognize this as being a certified copy of the search warrant that you initially obtained for defendant's home?
Yes, sir.
State's Exhibit Number 2, Judge Mays, same date. Do you recognize this as being a certified copy of search warrant ending 0597, also for that home, but now including electronic devices?
Yes.
State's Exhibit Number 3, certified copy of search warrant ending 0598 for vehicle. Is that correct?
Should be cool. Yes, it's for the vehicle.
State's Exhibit Number 4, certified copy of search warrant ending 0599 for an iPhone that was taken from defendant. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Tender states 1 through 4.
No objection.
Admitted.
In addition to the certified search warrants themselves, I have a package labeled State's Exhibit Number 5. And for our record, inside that packet, there are 4 discs. The outside of the discs have numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4. Looking at these, do you recognize these as being the 4 discs containing the recording of your sworn testimony before Judge Mays in support of State's Exhibit 1 through 4?
Yes.
And in fact, having watched and reviewed these, did you initial all of these so that you would recognize these 4 discs contained in package number 5?
Yes.
They're fair and accurate recordings of your testimony to Detective Mays in support of these warrants?
Yes.
Tender states 5.
No objection, Your Honor. I believe these are all certified documents provided by the magistrate.
They're admitted.
Looking at State's Exhibit 1 through 4 from June 18th of 2014, what was the basis articulated in sum for the court in support of these search warrants for the home, the vehicle, and the iPhone?
In basis, it was laid out the basically, he got up that morning, took the child to Chick-fil-A, ate breakfast, did not take him to daycare, took him to work, and then left work later that day, going seeing the child and pulling over, left work and then realized the child was still in the vehicle, pulled over, and we had the scene at Matteo's where he gets out of the vehicle and pulls the kid from the vehicle and states, "Oh my God, what have I done?" While the interviews are going on, I was given some information by the detectives watching that regarding statements that were made during the interview, which was added to the second search warrant regarding electronics, was stated they recently searched the internet child deaths inside vehicles and temperatures that would occur. I also stated this could be his greatest fear. During oral testimony, I also added that there was very limited or no emotion from Mr. Harris and Mrs. Harris regarding the loss of their son.
Did you also articulate for the magistrate court that this was a homicide investigation involving child neglect?
Yes, sir, I did.
At the time of the issuance of these first search warrants, the charges that you articulated in the 4 of them in total, did they include homicide/murder?
Yes.
And what about cruelty? What degree of cruelty was issued at this?
For cruelty, the child in first degree was listed on all 4.
And can you articulate for the court, at the time of the issuance of these first 4 search warrants, had an autopsy been performed on Cooper Harris yet?
No.
And why then did you seek the warrants based on cruelty in the first degree as opposed to cruelty in the second degree?
We were going, after the autopsy, they said it was hyperthermia, and we were going by lack of substance, which was listed as cruelty the first.
So at the time of the issue of these, you thought it was a cruelty first, deprivation of necessary sustenance?
Yes.
At some point with these successive search warrants, did that charge change based on information you received from the Cobb County Medical Examiner's Office?
Yes, it did.
And once you realized this was hyperthermia versus versus deprivation of necessary sustenance, did you include those charges in later search warrants?
Yes, later on it was changed to cruelty in the second.
Regardless, for these first 4 search warrants, did you specifically mention to Judge Mays that this was going to be a homicide investigation?
Yes, I did.
Now, I want to talk about items that you were searching for. In your testimony and in the affidavit and search warrant, did you indicate to the court that you would be seeking evidence of child neglect and child abuse?
Yes.
Did that include evidence that you were seeking in terms of electronic or documentary records?
Yes.
When you were speaking to Magistrate Court Judge Mays, did you indicate to him in your oral testimony as a basis for these search warrants that you wanted to try to find out a timeline based on what the defendant had asserted to Detective Stoddard?
Yes.
And what specifically can you articulate for the court was it that you were looking for that might assist you with looking into a timeline?
I believe that was brought up during the search warrant for the cell phone regarding gaining information about text messages, phone calls, that type of nature, for basically that day to see what was going on while his child was dying inside the vehicle.
You had also just mentioned child neglect. Were you also looking for anything on his phone and any of these other items that might indicate to you a lack of attention in terms of dealing with his child?
Yes.
And did you mention to the court during your testimony, included in State's Exhibit Number 5, the demeanor of the defendant and his wife during the course of the investigation as being a factor for the issuance of the search warrants?
Yes.
Did you articulate to the court what specifically did you share with Judge Mays?
I said that they're not showing much emotion regarding their child passing away.
You've had an opportunity to look at defendant's motion to suppress filed on December 4th of last week. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
Can you first explain in terms of State's Exhibit number 1 and number 2, that would be 0596 and 0597, why the difference? Why do we have 2 search warrants for defendant's home here?
Originally, the first search warrant, we did not have the statement by the defendant, and we were merely searching. The electronic devices were not included in that search warrant.
Based on the statement that was obtained from the defendant, what, if anything, changed in terms of expanding the scope of the search of defendant's home for 0597?
Based on his statement about doing research on in-car deaths and that type of thing, we expanded to include electronic devices to confirm or deny if he had been doing this research and also see when he had been doing it.
.0598 or State's Exhibit number 3 is going to be the search warrant for the vehicle, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And what specifically were you looking for in the vehicle that was the basis for that search warrant that was obtained?
For that search warrant, we were looking for trace evidence, including but not limited to latent impressions, hairs, fibers, fingerprints, blood, DNA, the child car seat, cell phones, to photograph the vehicle, take measurements of the vehicle, computers, electronic communication devices, data storage devices that would be located inside the vehicle, or any paperwork or writing related to the crime of homicide or cruelty to children.
Did that search warrant authorize you to seize, among other things, electronic devices that were inside the vehicle in question?
Yes.
And the search warrants that you obtained from the outset in this case, did they also authorize the examination of these items, particularly the electronic devices, for evidence that you referenced to the court?
Yes. After we secured the items, we took additional search warrants to search the electronics.
And I want to look at search warrant 0599, which would be State's Exhibit number 4. Do you have that in front of you?
Yes.
0599, the search warrant for the cell phone. Did that authorize you to do a forensic examination of the phone for, among other things, to find out call detail and messaging that was occurring?
Yes.
And you requested that both in writing as well as in your oral testimony to Detective Mays, is that correct?
In writing, we physically examined, documented the storage device, forensically imaged or copied, and later examined for evidence of these crimes. And in my oral testimony, I noted the texting and phone calls.
The defense, in their motion to suppress, pointed out something regarding State's Exhibit number 3 and number 4. Looking at number 3, first of all, what was the offense that was listed on the actual affidavit and application?
Homicide, murder.
And what about on State's Exhibit number 4? What was the offense that was listed there?
Cruelty to children in the first degree.
In the body of the application for both of these, did you include that this was a homicide investigation and also involving cruelty for both of these search warrants?
In the affidavit, it was described as a homicide investigation.
Okay. So while it's not specifically listed here as homicide, for example, in State's Exhibit number 4, that is listed in the body of that same document, is correct?
Yes, it is.
And similarly, State's Exhibit number 3, which lists homicide.
I don't think it's cruelty is listed in the body, but it's in my oral testimony.
Okay. So you did provide that either in writing or oral testimony to the magistrate court in support of States 3 and 4?
Yes.
And it was the same magistrate judge for all 4 of these search warrants?
Yes.
The fact that we only have one charge listed on States 3 or 4, was that intentional or was that a mere omission on your part?
This is a omission on my part.
Judge, to excessive leading, there's some leeway here, but I think I'll get to the state leading of it.
I'll chime in.
I think you can lead a little till you get to substantive, and then certainly when you get into substantive areas, leading would be inappropriate.
Yes, ma'am.
I think so far, we've been all right. I think perhaps Mr. Lupkin was sensing that we're getting to more substantive areas. But I can't speak for him. I'm just guessing.
All right. I want to talk next about the next search warrants that you sought and obtained in this case. What was the date of the next series of search warrants that you sought and obtained?
6/19/2014.
That would be June the 19th of 14, correct?
Yes.
I'm going to ask you to use that microphone too. I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Sorry.
So move your neck. That's all right. Okay. My math is correct. Did you obtain 7 warrants on that date in front of a different magistrate court judge? 7 search warrants, that is.
Yes, sir.
And who was the magistrate judge on the 19th, the following day, when you applied for these 7 search warrants?
That was Judge Inman.
Judge Inman. And at the time that you obtained these additional search warrants for the second day, did you have more complete information about the investigation?
I believe for those search warrants, the only thing that was added after the last one from the previous night was some statements from Leanna, Mrs. Harris.
Okay. Looking at these search warrants in totality, and let's do this for our record. State's Exhibit number 6, Mr. Lumpkin, ends with 0605. Do you recognize this as being a certified copy of a search warrant requested for a Dell Dimension computer recovered from defendant's home?
Yes.
State's Exhibit number 7, certified copy of search warrant ending 0606 for a Google Chromecast device, correct?
Yes.
State's Exhibit number 8, certified search warrant ending 0607. Is that a search warrant that was obtained for a MacBook Pro laptop?
Yes.
State's Exhibit number 9, search warrant ending 0608. You recognize that as being a certified copy of a search warrant for a Lenovo T530?
Yes.
State's Exhibit number 10, certified copy of search warrant ending 0609 for an Apple MacBook Pro. You recognize that as being search warrant. You obtained certified copy of it.
Yes.
State's Exhibit number 11, search warrant 0610 or ending 0610. Is that a search warrant for an Apple iPad?
Yes.
And State's Exhibit number 12, this is for an iPhone, search warrant ending 0611. This is for an iPhone from defendant's vehicle, is that correct?
Yes.
Looking at State's Exhibits 6 through 12, these are the copies or the certified copies of the search warrants you obtained on the 19th from Judge Inman.
Yes.
Tender States 6 through 12.
No objection.
Admitted.
Additionally, as with the prior testimony that you gave to Judge Mays for the first 4 search warrants, did you give oral testimony in support of State's Exhibits 6 through 12?
Yes.
And you were provided some discs, and did you have an opportunity to review them in advance of this hearing?
Yes, I did.
I'm going to show you a package marked State's Exhibit 13, which collectively contains 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 discs that are numbered on the white package and correspond to the search warrant 6 through 12. Have you had an opportunity to review State's 13, all of these discs that are contained in there?
Yes.
And having done so, were you asked to place your initials once you reviewed these so that you would recognize that these were copies of your sworn testimony before Judge Inman?
Yes.
Are they fair and accurate recordings of your sworn testimony given in support of State 6 through 12?
Yes.
Tender States 13.
No objection.
Admitted.
As with the search warrants obtained the previous dates, did these search warrants authorize for the examination of the electronic devices that are referenced therein for particular evidence?
Yes.
For each of those search warrants, did you tell the court in writing and orally what the basis for the issuance of those search warrants would be?
Yes.
And what additional fact, other than what you've already articulated for the court and what's contained in the warrants, did you include for these additional search warrants on the 19th?
Additionally, on the 19th, I added that Leanna Harris, the child's mother, that she was also questioned and made similar statements regarding research in-car deaths and how it occurs.
The electronic devices that are referenced in this, in the search warrants that are before the court, say Exhibits 6 through 12, where were those specific electronic devices recovered?
The first 3, the Dell Dimension computer tower, Google Chromecast, and MacBook Pro laptop were recovered from the residence, 1212 Winds Ridge Circle. And items 4 through 7, a Lenovo ThinkPad, Apple MacBook Pro, Apple iPad, and iPhone were recovered from the Hyundai Tucson, the vehicle.
Okay. Were those recovered with the prior search warrants that have already been admitted to the court, the first 4 exhibits that you obtained on June the 18th?
Yes, they were.
And these additional search warrants, did you ask for permission to have your unit be able to examine them forensically for evidence that would be pertinent to this crime?
Yes.
Did you share with Judge Inman the fact that Defendant Harris had been interviewed and made certain admissions about a timeline in this particular case?
Yes.
Similarly, did you ask for any permission to search for any videos?
There would have been any evidence related to research on in-car deaths or child deaths in vehicles.
And articulate for the court why it is specifically that y'all are looking for videos involving in-car deaths or death of children in vehicles.
I'm going to object. I don't believe that was answered to his prior question. He asked a question and he said that they were looking for evidence for research. And Mr. Evans' next question assumes something that's beyond what he just said. So I object to the nature of the question.
I don't think
you have to phrase your questions along those lines. You're fine.
I'm
The
sorry.
question is, why is it that you were looking for those types of videos on some of the electronic devices?
Mr. and Mrs. Harris had made statements they had watched videos regarding in-vehicle deaths.
And did you mention in the body of the search warrants and affidavits as well in your oral testimony what types of offenses you are investigating on the 19th?
Yes, homicide, murder, and cruelty to children in the first degree.
For the 19th search warrants, were you aware at the time you obtained those that the defendant had not called 911 as part of this case?
Objection, Your Honor. It's only relevant if you actually disclose something to the magistrate. What other knowledge he may have, unless of course it's a material omission, which I guess we may get into, but it's irrelevant. Any information other than what's actually in this affidavit and in its oral testimony. I think it is an attempt, or maybe not an attempt, but it could confuse the court and the fact finder looking at this to determine what is the actual basis for this search warrant. If something that's outside of that, then be a problem.
For what purpose is your question?
Well, it's two purposes. I want to see if, one, he knew that information, and the follow-up question, obviously, is did he share it with the magistrate court, or does he recall?
You can do that.
So my first question is, were you aware that he didn't call 911? And then answer that question first, if you will.
We were aware through our dispatch that they hadn't received a phone call from him. At that time, I wasn't specifically sure if he had called or not from his phone, but we did not, from our 911 dispatch center, they said they had not received a phone call from his number.
As part of the first batch of search warrants, State's Exhibit number 4, I believe it is, for the iPhone that was recovered from defendant, did that authorize you to look at the call details to see who, if anyone, had been called from his phone from
Yes.
that day?
Yes.
Okay. I want to talk about your next series of search warrants. Do you recall the date of the next series of search warrants that were obtained?
It would be June 24th, 2014.
Prior to June the 24th of 2014, did you participate in the examination of any of the devices that were the subject of the first search warrants we talked about?
Prior to that date? No.
Yes. So you didn't, in other words, execute them in terms of an actual search of content on any of these electronic devices?
No.
I want to talk about June 24th of 2014 then. Which judge did you approach in terms of your application for additional search warrants in this case?
That would be Judge Hicks.
Judge Hicks. And can you please articulate for the court why it is that you sought additional search warrants, some of which included devices and things that had already been recovered and were the subject of previous search warrants? What had changed?
We had received additional information through the investigation and wanted to be more detailed on what we were searching for.
What is some of the additional information that you had by the time of June the 24th, 2014?
We had information. We knew through the initial interview that Mr. Harris had gone to lunch with his two friends, but we did not know that he had returned to his vehicle during the issuance of the first group of search warrants.
How were you able to find out prior to June 24th of 2014 that the defendant had returned to his vehicle about midday, the date of Cooper Harris's death?
Through the surveillance video from Home Depot.
And reviewing that Home Depot video review, was the defendant observed returning to his vehicle sometime around lunch?
Yes.
Had the defendant said anything during his interview with Detective Stoddard about that fact?
No, he did not.
Did you include that as part of the additional basis for the search warrant on the 24th?
Yes.
What about the medical examiner? Did you have any additional information by June 24th of 2014 from the medical examiner that became a basis for these search warrants?
Yes, they said the death was caused by hyperthermia.
Hypothermia as opposed to...
Sustenance.
Okay.
Or lack of sustenance.
Because of that, the subject line or the offense that you're investigating, did you change what was listed on the search warrants that were obtained on June 24th of 2014?
Yes, it was changed to cruelty to a child in the second degree and homicide murder.
So still
So it's still
homicide.
homicide, but cruelty in the first was changed to cruelty in the second.
In addition to that, did you provide more precise, detailed statements about what the defendant had told Detective Stoddard during his interview?
Yes, I did. We were able to more review the video, and also I was able to discuss with Detective Stoddard in more detail what was discussed in the interview, which was added to this. And we got a more, the statement was a little more detailed. It said during the interview, Harris stated leaving his son in a hot car was the biggest fear. According to Harris, he recently viewed a television show concerning child death in cars. Harris also stated that he researched issues of death in cars on the internet.
Okay.
Instead of having one sentence with it all together, it was separated more.
You broke that down into separate sentences for the 24th?
Yes. He also made statements knowing specifics on the car seat during the interview, what the weight limit was and stuff like that. So we're looking at searches for car seats. And he claimed that he was happily married. Nonetheless, evidence of inappropriate sexual communications with other women was obtained.
So prior to the 24th, you had received information that despite defendant's claim, there was some infidelity.
Yes.
Did you include that as a basis for your written search warrants as well as your oral testimony that you were looking for evidence of motive and marital disharmony?
Yes.
What other things did you include in your application for search warrants on the 24th involving defendant's assertion about happy marriage? Did you include in there? What other things were you looking for?
We're also looking for videos, photos of the child to show development. Was he developmentally where a 22-month-old should be? Also, we still had searches regarding in-car deaths, communications with other people leading up to, including the day of the incident. This isn't just happening on cell phones now. There's different messaging, Kik and other type of messaging services you do over the internet and on computers. Statements were made regarding life insurance policies. We were looking to see if he had a life insurance policy on the child and what that would have been.
What information did you have that led you to include that as a basis for search warrants?
I believe that information was obtained through jail phone calls. I'm not for sure.
Okay. And let me show you the actual search warrants from the 24th, certified copies. State's Exhibit number 14, certified copy of search warrant ending 0633. Do you recognize this as being the search warrant for the Dell computer that was the subject matter of a prior search warrant?
Yes.
State's Exhibit number 15, search warrant ending 0634. You recognize that as being a search warrant for a Google Chromecast device that was the subject matter of a prior search warrant?
Yes.
State's Exhibit number 16, certified copy of search warrant ending 0635. Search warrant for MacBook Pro, subject matter of previous search warrant, correct?
Yes.
State's Exhibit number 17, certified copy of search warrant ending 0636. This is for a Lenovo T530 ThinkPad from a vehicle.
Yes.
I'm sorry, did you say 17?
17, and it's 0636.
Was there 16?
Yeah, 16 is 0635.
Okay.
Confirm that for me for the record. I may not have said the exhibit sticker.
Yes.
Step up there, Judge, just to verify that.
Of course you know.
Thank you. I got off kilter.
That's fine. Let me just back up to make sure I didn't mess it up. Maybe that'll assist you.
Thank you.
Okay. So 14 is 0633, correct?
Yes.
15 is 0634.
Yes.
16, certified copy of 0635.
Yes.
17, certified copy of 0636. This
Yes.
for a Lenovo and a vehicle as well, correct?
Yes.
18, certified copy of 0637 for an Apple MacBook.
Yes.
18, certified copy of search warrant ending 0638 for an iPad. Is that correct?
Yes.
Sorry, what number is that, Judge?
0638, number 19.
19. Thank you.
State's Exhibit number 20, 0639 for iPhone from vehicle,
Yes.
subject of a previous search warrant. Is that correct?
Yes.
21 is a certified copy of a search warrant for defendant's home. Is that correct?
Yes.
And finally, State's Exhibit 22, certified copy of search warrant 0641 for defendant's Home Depot HR records. Is that correct?
Yes.
Tender states 14 through 22.
No objection.
As with the testimony to support the prior search warrants that were obtained on the 18th and 19th, did you give oral testimony to Judge
And
Inman?
Hicks? Yeah, Hicks.
Hicks? I apologize. This is packet numbered State's Exhibit 23. For the record, inside 23 are a series of discs. There are 9 discs here, labeled 12 through 20. If you had an opportunity to review these discs,
Yes.
and after reviewing, did you initial each one of them to confirm that this is fair and accurate recordings of your oral testimony that was provided to Judge Hicks in support of State's Exhibits 14 through 22?
Yes, I did.
Tender states 23.
No objection.
For these additional search warrants obtained on the 24th, did they authorize you and Cobb Police to look into some motive evidence and evidence of marital disharmony?
Yes.
For State's Exhibit number 22 specifically, what items were you looking for State's Exhibit number 22?
Any 22 is okay. The HR. Any information on life insurance and also pay stub and finances, that type of thing.
Okay.
Go towards motive.
What was the subject or the location of where that search was actually going to be conducted? Is this defendant's home or elsewhere?
Home Depot.
Home Depot. So you were seeking records in possession of Home Depot, his employer?
Yes.
State's Exhibit number 21, the additional search warrant for defendant's home. Can you articulate why it is that you wanted to go back into defendant's home and what you and detectives were seeking specifically?
Yes. When the defendant went to lunch, they went to Publix, had some lunch, and then he went to Home Depot and purchased some light bulbs. And when we went back to his vehicle at lunchtime, he put the bag of light bulbs into the vehicle.
Is that what was observed on the Home Depot video footage?
Yes, based on the footage and also the search of the vehicle, the light bulbs being located in there. And we wanted to search his residence to confirm if, did he have a reason and need to purchase light bulbs, or was this just a reason to have his two friends drop him off at the car and to get in the vehicle? It's basically an excuse to get in the car.
The first 3 search warrants for Dell, the Google Chromecast device, and the MacBook Pro, where were those items of evidence actually recovered from prior to the issuance of these additional search warrants?
First 3 were recovered from the home.
And what about the Lenovo, which is the subject matter of 0636? Where was that recovered?
From this vehicle.
And what about the Apple MacBook 0637?
From the vehicle.
How about the iPad and iPhone, the subject matter of 0638 and 0639?
Also the vehicle.
For these additional search warrants, did you share with Judge Hicks in writing or otherwise that you had learned the defendant had been messaging other women on the date of Cooper Harris's death?
Yes, I did.
And did you specifically seek authorization to confirm some of those messaging, either by text message or otherwise, from defendant with these other people?
Yes.
All right, I want to talk about your next set of search warrants. Did you seek additional search warrants a few days later from a different magistrate court?
Yes, sir, I did.
Excuse me, different magistrate court judge, I should say.
Different judge.
And what was the date of the next search warrants that you obtained?
June 27th, 2014.
All right. Now, what were the specific items that were the subject matter of the June 27th, 2014 additional search warrants?
We were looking at a SanDisk Cruise Glider thumb drive, external hard drive, my passport external hard drive, SanDisk SD card, a DVD-R. We also had an additional search warrant for Justin Harris's residence, and search warrant for Cooper Harris and Justice Harris medical records from Kaiser Permanente, and a search warrant for Justin Harris's cell phone, and that would be the one he had on his person the day of the incident.
So we're clear for our record, there's 2 different cell phones that were recovered on June 18th, is that correct?
Yes.
This second search warrant that was obtained, we'll get to the number in a second, on the 27th, that was for the initial cell phone that was recovered by Piper, is that correct?
Yes.
Let me show you these additional search warrants. And I'll go slowly for our record. State's Exhibit number 24, search warrant ending 0653 for SanDisk recovered from vehicle. Does that look accurate?
Yes.
State's Exhibit 25, search warrant ending 0654, external hard drive. Is that correct?
Yes.
State's Exhibit 26, search warrant ending 0655, search warrant for a SanDisk 2 gigabyte SD card.
Yes.
State's Exhibit 27, search warrant ending 0656, search warrant for a DVD-R.
Yes.
State's Exhibit 28, search warrant ending 0657, subject matter being defendant's home. Is that correct?
Yes.
State's Exhibit 29, search warrant ending 0658, search warrant for Kaiser Permanente records of deceased victim Cooper Harris. Is that correct?
Yes.
Similarly, State's Exhibit number 30, search warrant ending 0659, search warrant for Kaiser Permanente records, this time of defendant Ross Harris, correct?
Yes.
And then State's Exhibit number 31, a subsequent search warrant ending 0660 for the iPhone 5 recovered from defendant on June the 18th of 2014.
Yes.
All right. Tender States 24 through 31.
No objection.
Admitted.
As with your prior search warrant applications, did you on the 27th give oral testimony to Judge Philip Taylor?
Yes.
I'm going to show you, it's been marked as package State's Exhibit number 32 containing seven discs which have numbers 21 through 28 and corresponding search warrant numbers. You've seen these discs, is that correct?
Yes, I have.
And having looked at them, did you initial the discs after reviewing them to confirm that they fairly and accurately contain the sworn testimony you provided to Judge Taylor in support of the search warrants, State's Exhibits 24 through 31,
Yes.
Tender States 32?
No objection.
Admitted.
Mr. Evans?
Yep.
Could you just double check again, and I apologize if I'm just not tracking. I'm noting there's 8 search warrants there from 24 to 31. Are there only 7 discs, or there are 8 discs, and no by chance?
There are 8 search warrants and there are 8 discs in State's Exhibit 32.
Very good, thank you. 8, thank you. No discs.
Admitted without objection.
The scan disc that's the subject of search warrant 0653, where was that specifically recovered?
From the vehicle.
What about the external hard drive that's the subject matter of 0654? Where was that external hard drive recovered?
Also the vehicle.
How about the scan disk 2 gigabyte SD card that's the subject matter of search warrant ending 0655? Where was that recovered?
Vehicle.
.0656, the DVD-R that you received a search warrant for, where was that recovered?
Vehicle.
State's Exhibit 0657, what was the subject matter of that particular search warrant?
To search this, Mr. Harris's residence.
And did this expand the scope of the permissible search of his residence from the prior search warrants?
Yes, it did.
And explain, please, for the court.
We also included, just like the previous one for the residents, included the light bulbs But we're also looking for any financial paperwork, banking information, credit card information, life insurance policies, or business paperwork, or related items to that.
For State's Exhibits 29 and 30, search warrants ending 0658 and 0659, what was the target or entity from which you were seeking documents in those two search warrants?
Kaiser Permanente.
So a third party, not from the defendant's home or vehicle or anything like that.
Correct.
And then State's Exhibit number 31, what's the target or subject matter of this particular search warrant?
It's the Mr. Harris's iPhone, which was on his person the day of the incident.
And did specifically State's Exhibit 31, did you seek authorization to expand the scope of what you were looking for on that iPhone based on newly discovered evidence from the investigation?
Yes, I did.
Can you please explain to the court?
We, in addition to, I think the original warrant, search warrant was just for regarding his statements about researching in-vehicle death. So we also included text messages, phone calls, and communications the day of the incident and leading up to. For this one, we included, because iPhones, you have internet access, and there's more capabilities than previously with older phones. Finances, credit card debt, business information, life insurance policy information, emails or communications about the child, wife, or family issues, photo videos of the child to show development, any research on information on car seats or information on car seat searches. Of course, we had searches about in-car deaths and communications with others on the incident date or days leading up to the incident.
And that include people that he may have been having extramarital affairs with?
Yes.
And had you learned that information prior to obtaining these search warrants from June the 27th?
Yes.
Okay. I want to ask you about some additional search warrants that you obtained in this case. In August of 2014, did you seek and obtain a couple of additional search warrants in the case?
Yes, I did. On August 14th, 2014, I obtained an additional search warrant. And this was for the Lenovo ThinkPad model T510. I believe Home Depot had contacted us and said that they had, Mr. Harris was issued a new computer in March of 2014, and they had the old one in storage. So this would have been a computer he had prior to March 2014.
Okay. Before I leave the 27th and we talk about that specific search warrant, in case I neglected to ask, for Judge Taylor, did you specifically incorporate all of your sworn testimony for all of those search warrants from the 27th to be included as a basis for all of them?
Yes.
For the August 14th, 2014, which judge did you apply for this additional search warrant?
Was Judge Strauss.
Okay. And I'm going to show you State's Exhibit number 33. State's Exhibit number 33 is search warrant ending 0816. Is this the certified copy of the search warrant you just referenced for a Lenovo ThinkPad that was in the possession of Home Depot corporate office?
Yes.
And I think you referred to as defendant's work computer, is that correct?
Yes.
Tender States 33.
No objection.
This is State's Exhibit 34, which is a single disc. Looking at this single disc, did you have an opportunity to review it to confirm that this contains your sworn oral testimony that was provided to Judge Strauss as the basis for search warrant number 33?
Yes.
Okay. Tender States 34.
No objection.
Admitted.
The subject matter of this particular search warrant from August the 14th, where specifically was that property located that you were seeking to obtain?
At Home Depot.
This was not in the defendant's residence or in his vehicle or anything like that?
No.
And whose property was it that you were seeking to obtain? Who actually owned that property?
Home Depot.
What was the next date for the final search warrant that you obtained in this particular case?
That was August 19th, 2014.
And what was the subject matter of that additional search warrant from August 19th of 2014?
That was to obtain the electronically stored data in the Lenovo ThinkPad T510 that the previous search warrant was for. This was to include finances, credit card debt, business info, life insurance, emails, communications regarding child, wife, and family issues, photos, videos of child, to show development, information about car seat searches, searches regarding in-car deaths, information on life insurance policies, and any other information related to the incident.
This is State's Exhibit number 35, certified copy of search warrant ending 0844. Is that a copy of that August the 19th search warrant that you had just given some testimony about?
Yes.
And who was the judge for this August 19th, 2014 search warrant that you obtained?
It was Judge Inman.
Tender States 35.
No objection.
Admitted.
As with the prior search warrants, you gave oral testimony in this case?
Yes.
Looking at State's Exhibit 36, this single disc, do you recognize this as being a fair and accurate copy of the oral testimony that you provided to Judge Inman in support of search warrant 0844, State's Exhibit number 35?
Yes.
Tender States 36.
No objection.
Admitted.
What, if any device in this particular case, did you actually conduct a search of, or in other words, did you actually examine? Did you look at any of the electronic devices, or was that tasked to somebody else?
I had looked at one computer.
And whose computer was that you looked at?
Was the Apple MacBook Pro.
For all of the items that were the subject matter of all of the search warrants that have been provided to the court, all of those items were within the jurisdiction of Cobb County, is that correct?
Yes.
I think that's all I have, Judge, at this time.
Your cross-examination, I expect to be more than 2 minutes.
I think so, Judge.
Let's recess until 1:15. Everybody have a good lunch.